And a huge thank you to FinanceMalta Kishkiri Moneybase for being our main sponsor here today and tomorrow. And of course, we couldn't do any of this without them. Now, ladies and gentlemen, just a few announcements before we go on to our next feature. I also do want to say thank you very much to the gentlemen here for this last fireside chat. I found it incredibly interesting. I was not expecting a conversation about size matters this afternoon, but I was very entertained by that. A fantastic fireside chat. But ladies and gentlemen, I do want to just add something that I've been asked to pass on to you. And I'm going to do it now because I have a feeling at the end of our next feature, everybody's going to run away to the networking drinks. But just to let you know that you need to register for your CPE hours. And to do that, you can rescan the Access QR code which you received by email. This does not make an awful lot of sense to me, but I'm hoping it makes sense to you. Can I have a nod if that makes sense to you? Does that make sense? Excellent, fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. So I just mentioned the networking drinks. I will mention this once again after we finished today here. We're going to be heading over to the Portomasso suite for networking. And I mentioned this right at the very beginning of today. Networking in this environment with these people, you guys here from this industry, is probably one of the most unique opportunities. Do make your way over to the Portomasso suite after we've finished here. Enjoy the networking. And as I said before, if you need to let anybody know that you're not coming back to the office, now's the time to do it. So it is my absolute pleasure to welcome John Malia to the stage here to guide you through this fast-paced spotlight session, which will be hosting views, knowledge, and opinions from a wide variety of areas and industries. Ladies and gentlemen, please put your hands together.
Thank you, Trudy Kier. So I have to start with a personal note. I'm terribly excited to be on the stage. The thing is, I am not from your industry, but in preparing for what's about to happen here, I realized that what is about to be discussed here now is actually at the core of everything that concerns us as Maltese. You see, if you live in Malta, you feel a certain tension. You know what I'm talking about? A tension between prosperity and our quality of life, between generating wealth, but at the same time defending our environment, our integrity. Sometimes we have to defend our identity as this miraculous nation state itself. You know, too many times we've been hearing the story that in order for Malta to become rich, it must sacrifice Malta. Today, thanks to these fine people here, I find this claim to be cheap. I find this claim to be false. I've met brilliant, innovative, creative minds that know exactly what Malta's value is. They know what we are worth, and they know exactly how to extract that value. But at the same time, they know that safeguarding our environment, our heritage, the integrity of our institutions, these are not moral luxuries. These are actually economic advantages. So what we're going to discuss here on the stage today, guys, is of national importance. It's a national urgency. You see, lastly, I will add this. We are going to discuss what financial decisions we must take, therefore decisions that affect everything in our life. Today, so that tomorrow we have a Malta that continues to generate wealth, but at the same time, a Malta that our children will be proud to call home. So welcome to the stage our first speaker for this blitz chat that actually deserves 6 conversations of 6 hours each, but I'm going to do my utmost. We're going to help define what are the trends, the financial trends that are going to bring Malta into itself in the future. it's Konrad Kassar Torregiani.
Thanks, John.
Thank you. I think I've already messed this one up. They told me 16 times I should be sitting on the other side. Is that correct? That is correct. All right. So, Konrad, welcome to the stage. Our time starts now. Look, can you, for context, just give us a brief explanation? What is an MFSAC working group?
All right, Malta Financial Services Advisory Council is a group of individuals appointed under the auspices of the Ministry of Finance, and it brings together representatives of the private sector and public sector to formulate primary objectives, to formulate a revision to Malta's financial services strategy. And Joe Zamitabona, who was here earlier, is the chairman of the council.
Right. And you were part of one of these working groups?
Yeah, I was part of two working groups, the tax and the family office working groups.
Correct. Now, the family office is obviously a thing that is quite close to your heart. It's a thing that you're quite confident is an opportunity. First of all, let's start here. What is a family office?
Okay, when we talk family office, we're talking about a structure or a framework implemented typically by high net worth or ultra high net worth individuals to help them protect, administer, manage, and grow their wealth.
Right. And we already have a few family offices here.
We definitely have a number of family offices which have chosen Malta for some aspect of their activities. So they may be based here or operating through here. So yes, family offices is not new to Malta.
So we have that experience.
Yeah.
Can I ask, why has it been, however, identified as a niche that has the potential to grow?
So if you look at the data, it's estimated that about 84 trillion in value is going to transfer generationally over the next 20 years. So there is a very large number of people who are very suddenly going to come into a lot of wealth. The prevailing view is that a large number of these will look to the family office structure as the solution for them to manage, protect, grow their wealth. So when we looked at that, we said, how can Malta carve a niche for itself in this space? And that is where then the whole proposition around developing a fit-for-purpose offering for family office was born as part of the strategic objectives.
So let's get into that immediately. So you call this regulatory framework a fit-for-purpose light touch framework. Yeah. What does that mean?
So what it means basically is we said, look, we understand that family offices have a particular profile to them. There is management of wealth, but typically it's management of wealth by individuals for themselves, and they allocate that responsibility to people they trust. So it's not a third-party service in the typical wealth management sense. And as a result, we needed to manage the regulatory profile to remain capable to protect the jurisdiction, but not to then interfere at a prudential level to safeguard the interests of the beneficiaries of that service, because it's people managing their own wealth effectively in the manner they choose. So the need for the regulator to protect was not there. So as a result, we could take the regulatory framework we have and simplify where relevant so as to make Malta more attractive. Most importantly, we wanted to remove doubt. So when you get into the family office space, there are some concerns around whether, do I need a license for this, do I not? The purpose of this was to say, let's answer those questions, let's give an answer which is predictable, and which is attractive in that it is a light touch. So we went for a notified regime. This is not something which is unique to family offices, but we had to adjust to make sure we fit within the regulatory framework a family office context. And now we have a light touch regulatory profile which allows Malta to position itself for all aspects of the family office demands. Not all family offices will go into wealth management as a core function of the family office. They may outsource that to third-party service providers who will be licensed depending on where they're located. But from the proposition of Malta, can I also do that in Malta without getting myself caught up in a steep level of bureaucracy around licensing and regulatory compliance? The answer is yes. There's a fit-for-purpose, light-touch platform you can operate off.
So it's simplicity, it's clarity, it's the ability to be able to plug into the economy in a way that makes you immediately functional. You also pointed out something quite interesting to me, which is that Malta's legal heritage makes it an ideal jurisdiction for these kinds of enterprises. Why?
So what we see is that the benefit of Malta having gone through different legal traditions, so we have a civil law basis with a common law overlay, allows our legal system to be very versatile when it comes to designing solutions which will configure well with the needs or the requirements of the family in question. So whether you've got a common law background and you're looking for trusts as part of the solution, we can accommodate that. On the other hand, if you're looking for a civil law institute like the foundation, we understand that equally and we can configure. So our legal system is versatile in that sense. Flexibility is an important part of the proposition, and that is an inbuilt feature. We didn't have to do anything about it because the foundations for that have been laid over years.
So how far along in the pipeline are you with this regulatory framework? Is it done? Is it about to be implemented?
No, I think it's fair to say we've done everything we set out to achieve. So we've simplified the regulatory profile and the platform. We're now going through a process of educating, of course, the industry so that they understand what has been conceived and put together so it can be then marketed and exported. We've made the necessary changes which we needed to from a tax point of view vis-a-vis highly qualified persons, it was mentioned earlier. So I think all of the building blocks which we set out to achieve have been laid. It's now a process of education and then most importantly going out there, trying to promote this as a niche for the jurisdiction. The objective, of course, is not to attract family members to relocate and live here. The idea what Malta set out to achieve policy-wise was choose Malta as the place to establish your office or a branch of the office. That should generate good value-add employment opportunities on the island. So that's going to create wealth in that sense, but with a low carbon footprint. We're talking 4 or 5 people offices, high value-add, and hopefully locate in Malta activities, which will then be conducted from Malta. And then you have all the other propositions we've heard about this throughout today as to why Malta makes sense. But really, we're at a phase of go out there, spread the word, collect intelligence, come back, refine as necessary to perfect the product.
And so how soon will you be going to market, really?
We're already in the market. I think everybody is doing their own fair share. Some people are more active than others. We just need to collectively understand how the opportunity can translate and feed that back. This is not a static process, this is a dynamic process. So we get intelligence, we go back, we refine, we tweak, we adjust. But the initial feedback seems to be favorable. So clearly there's an opportunity for Malta because we are part of the European Union, because we can provide an entry or exit point. There's an interesting proposition for Middle Eastern high net worth families looking to Europe. There are opportunities open up because the UK maybe doesn't provide the same proposition it has historically provided. There are changes going on there which can work to our advantage. So it's really in that phase, go out and spread the good word, so the good news, and try to bring in some business.
So subsequent to that evangelizing, Conrad, I will thank you for being part of this conversation. It was truly fascinating to learn about this, and I look forward to having deeper conversations over some whiskeys, I hope.
Thanks, John.
Okay. Thank you very much, Conrad. And now from aircraft leasing, join me in welcoming on the stage Nicolas Valencia.
Hello, John.
Welcome.
Hey, everyone.
So, Nick, obviously Malta has a rich, these cushions are really weird. Hold on. So Malta has a, very weird. Malta has a rich history in aviation, particularly in aircraft registration, aircraft maintenance. We do repair, flight training. So what is your working group actually proposing that we explore?
So thank you, John, and everyone. The idea is that over the past years, let's say actually nearly 2 decades, Malta has, we could say, exploded in the aviation scene in the sense that the growth was very significant, and mainly that growth related to what we call generally aircraft operations.
Yep.
So it is actually how aircrafts are operating, the maintenance, the oversight of them, the actual flying and the compliance thereof. So that is something which over the past years has developed significantly and extremely positively. So if you look at the pool of operators which are here, you're speaking of people like Ryanair, VistaJet, Wizz Air, our own national airline, Comlux, but this has been a development over the past 20 years and it's very significant. So what the FinanceMalta, the MFSAC, the government in general saw is that whilst you have a very strong backbone when it comes to the actual operations and maintenance, there wasn't much to say in Malta about finance. And principally, especially from a financial leasing perspective, because financial leasing is actually regulated in the sense that it is pretty much equivalent to a banking license to be able to operate as a finance lessor. That was seen to by the working group, and the working group determined, amongst many other measures which are already implemented, but mainly that there should be a deregulation or a significant deregulation of this requirement, of the regulatory requirement in the financial leasing market of aircraft. So that's pretty much it.
So am I understanding right? Prior to this change, has the change happened, or
no? It's going to happen.
happen?
It should be happening in the next months.
Financing an aircraft would require a license similar to operating a bank.
Yes, essentially. There were some exceptions, but in general, the financing of aircraft through leasing, finance leasing, would require that license. The financing of aircraft through direct lending obviously requires that license. When compared to European jurisdictions where this is not required, and the main, I wouldn't even call it competitor, the main jurisdiction in this field is Ireland. Ireland does not have that requirement. Germany and France do not have that requirement. And the new kid on the block, which is Shenzhen in China, doesn't have that requirement, besides not being restricted at all with state aid rules which bind European entities and European undertakings. So there you go.
So basically we're freeing up regulation in order to be able to compete.
Exactly.
What about infrastructure? Will we need to build like massive hangars to house these planes? How does that work?
Not really, because it's pretty much financing. So what the finance leasing entity will be is an entity which will essentially, let's say, finance the aircraft through a lease mechanism. So you're renting the aircraft and you're paying its value over a period of time with the different possibilities of giving the aircraft back, purchasing the aircraft, standard.
So the aircraft aren't necessarily housed here.
Actually, what we did over the past 20 years, where we had this massive increase of operators, that's when the aircraft were actually housed. So I think we already do have a lot of space. As anyone who has taken a flight recently has realized that the airport is in constant development. So there's going to be a new terminal, a new luxury terminal. So in reality, that space is already there. And I think let's say, the use of that space and the exploitation of that space has been part of the success of the operators industry. So now we're speaking of something which the plane is simply the end asset, right? But at the end of the day, it's a financial instrument which we're talking about.
Aside from the regulation and kind of the history and the experience, do we have the talent locally to operate in such a space?
Obviously, this gene pool and this pool here is the talent which can actually morph to work in that space. So pretty much there's going to be an element of importation of talent to be able to grow this industry. However, within our pool of professionals, I think there is a massive possibility to have actual local talent to actually handle this without difficulty.
Is there anything else about Malta that makes it ideal for an industry like this?
I think the fact that you have access to the regulatory bodies, government in general, at such a, let's say, and I wouldn't call it easy, but in an accessible manner, is a big thing, right? So, and that's one of the advantages of Ireland, because Ireland in the world is relatively small.
Right.
So it's a small community. So again, the fact that we're English speaking, the fact that from a let's say, a court perspective, from a justice perspective, the courts have been, when it comes to the aviation field, especially when it comes to enforcement, the courts of Malta have been at the last year they were ranked as first in the implementation of the Cape Town Convention. The Cape Town Convention gives you the rights to take over the aircraft if there were a default or not. This year we fell to second because I think Canada took again the first slot. But the point is, when it comes to actually enforcement of creditor rights and finance lessor rights, Malta has proven to be possibly the top jurisdiction. And that is extremely, John, it's extremely attractive for these financiers to set up shop, especially on one they regulates, right? So you're pretty much certain that your asset is with you, it's protected if there's a default.
So we're saying access to the regulator, we have the talent, we are in the process of deregulating, we have stable courts. What other changes must Malta make in order to become very competitive?
I think from when we saw in the operator field, one of the biggest challenges was the day-to-day life. I mean, two people who worked in the aviation field, that one key operator, two of its top brass relocate to Lake Maggiore in Italy, and they were living here for 4 years. What happened was, one of them told me that candidly, said, on the 4th year, his kid had to start school, and he realized that he hadn't registered his son or daughter anywhere. I told him, I think you've got a bit of an issue. It's not that easily accessible. The truth is today there are more, for example, private schools available. But the point is there are these little things which actually do impact how the outlook of someone who actually would need to relocate to start working here. I mentioned one, let's say, fleeting point, but the issue is that one would need to see, I would say, although I've seen a great improvement over the past years, but issues like cleanliness, okay, now it's the talk of the town, parks and whatever, but these are really important things. You know, these people actually need to live here with their families. So the quality of life on a day-to-day basis, people tend to discount it, but I think it's very important, as we've seen, right? These are the challenges. If you need to attract a large leasing company, it's going to come here, and they're going to send 4 of their top brass. These are the questions they're going to be asking, besides tax and stuff, which I think we're brilliant on, but this is the daily stuff which concerns people. And I think when strategizing these things, we need to start thinking about these.
They actually have to call it home.
Exactly.
So look, we're almost out of time, but I'm very curious, subsequent to this regulation or deregulation happening, what are the next steps? And how soon will we be going around the world attracting business?
Good. I think the next steps now is that the legislation actually passes to Parliament, because there are acts which need to be changed and legal notices which need to be tabled, but that has been done, it will be done brilliantly, as they've also reviewed drafts and everything by the MFSA. Once that is done, I already know that FinanceMalta, the MFSAC, but mainly FinanceMalta, will be organizing events. It has to be done worldwide, where this industry, or this new branch of the aviation industry and the finance industry, will be promoted. And I urge everyone to really put their energy here. There's a massive pool of operators which already exists. So there are financiers who already know about Malta. Malta is not novel to them in aviation. So I urge everyone to put all their energy to promote this.
Nicolas Valencia, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone. Have a good week.
And now to discuss the digital transformation of Malta's banking and financial services, please welcome to the stage Herman Chaparra.
John.
Welcome.
Thanks.
So Herman, look, when it comes to payment institutions, crypto asset service providers, Malta is actually already doing quite well.
It is, John. Just allow me to do this. Thank you.
Can you give us some insight as to how the industry has progressed over the last few years?
Yes, we've heard a lot about digital transformation today. It's all we're talking about. We're seeing changes in how technology is enabling new channels, new products, how the services are being more individualized. And we've heard about AI, and that's Ian's topic today, but also in terms of machine learning. It's here, it's now. I think we've done pretty well. So I think first thing we need to do is take stock of fintech and what we've been doing for the last few years. This is not a new topic.
How do you measure done pretty well? How does...
Done pretty well. We've heard also today, there was Gate on stage saying that in 2018, we came up with our VFA framework, first in the world, regulating crypto assets. That has been a success story. Now also with the introduction of MiCA this year, we realized that, yes, MiCA is very similar to the VFA framework. So we were right out there 7 years before Europe decided to join us. This is obviously really good. We've gained expertise. We've already started to license crypto asset service providers under MiCA, the European legislation. We're very happy to say that we've already licensed 8. Not a great number, but 5 of these 8 are global players. So this is kudos to Malta and to the team, obviously.
And is this because we were ahead with legislation?
This is a European legislation, so we were on time with legislation. What we were ahead of was the knowledge, the expertise. The guys who were already licensed with us on the local framework, they were prepared for MiCA. In fact, I mentioned 8 already licensed. We have 19 under the old framework seeking to become licensed under the new framework. And we have another odd 50 applications under MiCA.
How long does it take for an application to be processed?
It depends how good the application is. But generally, let's say 6 months. Especially if you...
Can you support them in giving you better applications?
We can support the advisors by being very frank about our expectations. The law is what it is. There's RTSs which says, I want this list. They know the list, so it's up to them to provide us with good applications. But it's not just in the crypto space. I'm very passionate about the payment space as well. Also falls under my functions remit, payments institutions. I think Dimitris mentioned 25. We actually have 35 EMIs. In total, we have 68 payment institutions licensed in Malta. So we do kick above our weight completely. We also have another 60 new applications in the payment space. So I think, which is a bit scary really, because when you think about it, all these applications, if only 60% get through next year, we'll end up with about a landscape of 150 plus licensed entities, all fintech, because this is all technology-driven entities. The space is changing, and it brings its own challenges. So success brings its own challenges. We have to be mindful of that.
What is at the core of this success? Why so many conversions?
I think we've heard a lot today about what makes Malta attractive, whether it's English, whether it's the weather, whether it's the openness.
English, the language, you mean?
The language, yes, the language helps. But it's also the availability of the regulator as well. It's the infrastructure, the ecosystem. It's openness to business, openness to innovation. It's the risk appetite of the jurisdiction. Of course, we're not saying come to us and go crazy. We're saying come to us. We want quality, not quantity. We're getting the quantity as well, but we definitely will keep on focusing on quantity because we cannot make mistakes. So quality to us is supreme. It's right up there, and this is why we want quality players. We want good players in the market because obviously there's the reputation of the MFSA, there's the reputation of Malta as a jurisdiction, and that is foremost in everything.
So you're keen on the crypto space as well. Obviously, it's a very exciting horizon to be looking towards, but obviously it comes with, well, a reputation of volatility, let's say. What are the threats for Malta's economy or What are we looking out for when we're interfacing with something as volatile as crypto?
Sure, but that's the market. We regulate the intermediaries,
The provider.
the providers, the operators. Risks are there, obviously. Technology risks, foremost of all, cybersecurity. We mentioned earlier on as well. So yes, cyber, it's the safeguarding of assets. These are what we watch out for, and this is why we want good players. Again, we want local substance, and with local substance comes skill sets as well. We mentioned skill sets even in other panels. Yes, big numbers require big skills on the ground. We have limited pool of such resources, so we have to be mindful of that. We don't want.
That actually brings me to my next question, because it seems like we have a steady influx of business. We have a solid infrastructure. The regulator really has now experience and is becoming efficient and effective. We're gaining more experience in the sector as the years roll on, which all sounds great. What are the changes Malta needs to make to get to the next level?
Next level is keep investing, keep pushing, capacity building, both in terms of the regulator and the CEO mentioned also before, using tools ourselves to be better regulators. Obviously, since the landscape is changing, we need to change our approach to how we supervise, how we authorize, what to look out for, because if everything is done by technology, these are all remote companies. There's no branch or like we're used to. So we need to have effective tools to actually do intrusive supervision from our offices. So yes, data, we have to be data driven. This is very, very important. Also, in terms of investments in the skill set, not just for ourselves, but for the market. We don't want to have an influx of new institutions coming here and poaching good people from the other institutions. Poaching does happen, we cannot stop it. We are being poached ourselves, like we poach ourselves, but we need to grow the sector, we need to grow the pool. I think we're very lucky that we already have a very good ecosystem, whether it's advisors, accountants, auditors, IT guys, compliance, MLROs. We do have it, we need more. And as was mentioned before, we need to come up with incentives to ensure people can relocate to Malta, make it more attractive, maybe through the highly qualified guys we mentioned, that channel could really help. University of Malta, ensuring that we have.
Are they part of this entire strategy?
Yes, completely. We do speak with them in terms of fintech, but also in terms of MFAC. There's a whole strategy there to ensure that the new kids coming out of university have the right skill sets, have the right attitude, so that, yes, they can find good quality employment going forward. We help them and they help us.
So clearly, you're very confident about the future. The future is bright, the future is digital. Thank you very much, Herman Chapara.
Cheers, thanks.
So now to discuss sustainable finance, welcome to the stage, Gabriella Borda. Merhaba. So Gabriella, what is sustainable finance and why should we care?
It is finance based on informed decisions that are produced through an ESG lens. So we think in systems when we define sustainable finance, when we're deciding whether this project falls within the boundaries of sustainable finance. And why should we care? Because we cannot ignore risks that emanate from, they start from being issues and then become emerging risks and priority risks at an exponential rate. So we're seeing this happening, like climate change risks. Today they are financial risks, geopolitical risks, they are financial risks. So they are affecting our balance sheet. Skills, talent, resources, scarce resources such as food and water systems. So we need to think about the system, and the system is made of various components. So sustainable finance.
Is it hard to persuade businesses to think of the system?
Once you start explaining why you should do it, then I think you shouldn't ignore it, because it doesn't make sense to ignore it, and I'll tell you why. So why should I invest in a renewable energy project and then end up discovering that the infrastructure cannot take it?
Yeah.
Why should I invest in digital technologies and then I don't have enough power supply to satisfy the demand? Why should I invest in a business model depending on certain skills when already today, we don't have educators teaching certain subjects that I sort of lead these students to become professionals in this field? So unless we think about the components of the system, we'll end up missing many things. And I think today we are trying to solve the problems because of the linear thinking approach. So assuming that what happened in the past will be sort of happening in the future, even though we say the past is not a guarantee of the future, but still we focus on forecasts. We need to shift the mindset and focus on foresight.
What's the difference?
When you focus on foresight, you train your mind to think about changing environments. So there's no one future, we know it. I mean, if we know what's going to happen, sort of tomorrow.
It's the case of creating scenarios.
Exactly, creating scenarios, obviously plausible scenarios. So we know that, for example, with climate change, we can have various scenarios depending on what decisions we will be taking and implementing from now on.
So when it comes to sustainable finance, how is Malta doing?
Malta, so we've heard several speakers talking about initiatives locally. So we have been launching various initiatives. Obviously, the scale is what it is in Malta. So we are a small island, and our projects might be small compared to other countries. What perhaps we should be doing more is coordinating more and ensuring that we're not, sort of allocating resources to do the same thing. But the mindset is there, and sometimes we don't even say this is sustainable finance. We don't even have to label it. The important thing is that we know what is the purpose. And I think we have acknowledged, even during this conference, that it is important to think about sustainability, ESG, geopolitical risks, how it can affect us, climate change risks, how it can affect us. They all sort of, this is all part of the system.
And when it comes to sustainable finance in Malta, could you explain it? Look, we're kind of a small territory. It is what it is. Our projects are small. Where should we look towards?
So, for example, within the working group, what we've done, so we started by understanding the current state and also defining between two key dimensions of sustainable finance, namely sustainable finance in Malta. So what are we doing and how are we using sustainable finance as an enabler to become more competitive, more resilient, and sustainable finance from Malta? So how can we leverage our financial services ecosystem and infrastructure to mobilize capital, not only for projects taking place here, but even internationally? We are also, an international financial center, so it does make sense to think about how can we tap into the market of sustainable finance, because so far we haven't looked into that, sort of how can we use our financial services ecosystem to mobilize.
And have there been any conclusions drawn as to how this can be done, how we can use our capital to export it?
One thing we were discussing is how shall we do it? And sustainable finance, or the purpose is to target the sustainable development goals, which are broad. So we should focus. We agree that we should focus. We should compete on focus, not on scale.
Yeah.
And we started sort of discussing, so on which sectors shall we focus? And, well, various sectors came up, energy, aviation, and very important. However, then we started focusing more on the blue economy. Why? Because we have natural strengths there. So we have already a very strong ecosystem. We have been investing in the blue economy because obviously it comes naturally. We're an island. Why not, sort of also leveraging now the ecosystem of the blue economy, knowing that it is also facing challenges to become more sustainable, to decarbonize, to become more operational efficient. So it is a case that we can focus our attention on.
So subsequent to the workshop and subsequent to these very interesting debates, what did you determine are the critical next steps?
So this was, the ideas stemmed from the working group. So what we recommended is to gather further insights, data, in order to be able to take the next step. So how would we do this? How would we focus on the blue economy? How would we leverage our financial services ecosystem? Yeah. Because we can, speak about, of course, designing new innovative financial products, leveraging also on the digital-enabled sustainable finance. Why not? We have mentioned how important it is, and in a way, I also believe that we should look perhaps elsewhere and not only at traditional finance. Because so far, not only in Malta, but globally, we have not managed to close the gap that to invest, sort of more in the sustainable economy. So perhaps we should also try the decentralized finance to achieve our goals.
Gabriela Borda, that was terribly fascinating. Thank you very much for your time. Joining me now on stage for the penultimate discussion on, this time, auto-enrollment, second pillar pension, it's Matthew Brincat.
Hi, John.
Welcome, Matt.
Thank you very much. Quite a deep voice I have on mic, nice.
Excuse me?
My voice on mic is very deep, apparently.
Yes, it's very seductive, Matt. It's not very seductive.
Hello, John.
I don't think I can continue this interview, maybe. So, can you tell us what your working group was dealing with? Obviously, it's second pillar pensions, it's occupational pensions, it's something that's been, part of the public discussion broadly as well. What were you trying to identify?
Well, essentially, the whole thinking behind the working group was to try and make sure that, as far as possible, we incentivize the working population in Malta to actually contribute towards a supplementary pension of sorts, which means that as the government pension has been forecasted to be not sufficient going forward because of the birth rate and a number of other issues which are well known, the idea is to try and find a methodology which would effectively incentivize the employees to actually contribute to a so-called supplementary plan, which is the occupational plan, which would help them to have a pension when they retire, which is, by the way, no easy task. Because as you can imagine, the idea is that you would start when you start working, and when you start working, you definitely don't have any incentive psychologically to contribute to your pension. You don't even think about your pension.
Right.
And that is, of course, quite a challenge to shift the psychological
Did the working
way we
group try
approach
to address this psychological shift?
Yes, and first of all, FinanceMalta has been working on this topic for many, many years. I think the first working group was set up in 2008. So it's not something which dawned on Malta from now. Not only, but if you look at a lot of the European countries around us, they all have this system, or most of them have this system. Namely the UK, which we look up to as like a beacon on these things because they've had a lot of experience, has made a shift which has has had an actual massive impact.
But the question was about like how are we going to persuade 18-year-olds joining the workforce to give up a portion of their disposable income?
Yes, and the only way in which you can persuade is to make them swallow the pill. There is no other way. So effectively, if we go with what we call active selling, which has been happening from 2017, we've had a number of tax incentives till now, we could see that if you had to look at, there's no official study, but from the operators, I can get a feel as to where we are.
Sure.
And the coverage will show you that from close to 0% with active selling, so when I go and I try to convince someone, we're now probably at around 5 to 8% coverage, which is still low. Now, thanks to all the hype and the news and all the let's say, moving parts around the word pensions becoming a bit more popular, including seeing an advert on a bus. People are now picking it up, but it is still not sufficient. And if we keep on going like this, we will do it so slowly.
Is this why we're going to auto-enrollment now?
Yes, exactly. So the thinking is to go for auto-enrollment now.
And the working group thinks that this is the right path to pursue?
The working group thinks, and not only the working group, I think even the minister and basically all the people who work in the industry think this is the only way. There is no other way. Which is the main point. If we continue down the active selling, we're going to get nowhere.
So the government intends to be the first to provide this opt-out occupational pension. I believe it's to do so by the end of the year. Am I correct?
This is a bit of a touchy subject for the government, but but effectively...
Touch away, please.
I will touch slowly, yes. The idea of the government was that by the end of this year, so in a few weeks' time, they would have their own pension plan up and running. Mm-hmm. And a consultation paper was issued in June this year to say this. The experience has, however, shown, and truth be told, we had told them, and this is between you and me,
okay,
that it is not exactly easy to wake up one morning and just have a pension system running. Why? Because the regulator needs to get its house in order to make sure that there is the proper regulation.
Right.
And at the same time, the operators need to shift mindset. More than that, and even more difficult, both the employers and the employees in the market need to understand what they're doing and what they are dealing with, which is no easy task. Now, the government has done something which I think is rather bright, which is in the budget of 24-25, it has said, so the budget for 25, it basically said that it will contribute to its own pension plan by saying that if you're an employee of the public service and you contribute up to 100 a month, it will match it. So it has already begun to get people thinking that if you have an actual contribution from your employer, it makes sense to put in some money, and this is a crucial point in the whole story.
Is this part of the psychology?
This is part of the psychology in the sense there are two main elements.
You feel like the government is already giving you something?
Not only the government, but the government has, let's say, started. The truth is that if you go to your employees, because you have employees like we have employees, and you tell them, would you like to contribute 50 euros a month into a private pension? They will tell you, oh, sure, John, why should I do it via your pension plan? Why can't I just do it myself? There even are tax incentives for me to do it myself. Well, the reality is that unless you contribute, and therefore the employee will tell you, so if I give 50 and you give 50, I get 50 free every month. And that is why they will contribute. And the whole thinking behind auto-enrollment, which supplements this, is that psychologically we're going from active selling into a system of opt-out, which means that as an employer, John Malley and co. Will have to effectively offer your employees a pension plan, a private pension plan, and they have to opt out. And the studies, and there are many, show us that the opt-out levels, even for people who are 50 plus, who you may think don't even think about it, is actually quite low.
Will one service provider be servicing these 55,000 public sector workers?
That's the question which you have to ask the Minister of Finance. But if you have to ask me, that would be a mistake. It could be, though, that the government decides to issue a tender and that you have only one provider. Whether that will happen or not is not within my remit, effectively, but...
So look, we're really pressed for time, so I'm going to ask you one last question, which is, the aim is to roll out in the private sector in roughly 8 months. It should have been.
It should have been, but I think...
But we're not sure if that will happen for certain.
No, look, let's put our...
Ducks in a row?
Ducks in a row, if you want. What's for sure is that next year, or at least within the next few years, to be really expansion, the government will do something. What has happened is that following the consultation paper which has been issued, the government went silent, probably because it is now realized that both the regulator and the industry need to catch up with the timing, and I would guess that hopefully...
So we don't really have a timeline
happen.
That you can give us?
Again, John,
you're not the government.
If I was in cabinet, I would tell you, but unfortunately, I'm not.
So that's it, guys. Vote for Matthew.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right. Last, certainly not least, to discuss Malta's AI and FinTech strategy, please welcome the very eloquent Dr. Ian Gauci. Welcome, sir.
All right, John.
Hadida, inti?
Hadida mafġa.
So, Ian, Malta moved fast to implement the AI Act. We're very well ahead with that. We did so under one market surveillance authority. Do we currently enjoy any advantages over perhaps competing jurisdictions?
Yes, we have two market surveillance authority, and we've already, to a certain extent, laid out the terrain for the AI Act. I think we're one of the first in Europe. The advantages, so I don't repeat what was repeated before, but I would focus on agility. That's why we implemented the AI Act.
Yeah.
Agility as well to an extent that we anticipated as well where the AI Act would go. Let me remind you that way back in 2017 we were the first country in the EU to create a technology authority. So we had already created conformity assessment parameters. We had already catered for AI under the cap of innovative technology. We had already a sandbox, actually more than one, but in the technology realm, we had a sandbox specifically for the MDIA, as much as the MFSA had its own fintech sandbox, as much as the MGA as well had its own sandbox for digital tokens. So this sandboxing environment, even though not dating back from 2010, like the English, because we copied the English, because it was a fantastic and phenomenal model. I mean, we're quite used to that model as well. So we already had all the right ingredients. We're agile. So we literally nipped at the opportunity. And the opportunity there, I mean, it's something which was there for everybody to take. If you see the investment in AI, particularly in financial services, McKinsey's and others, we're speaking about billions, not millions, billions. If you look at the, I mean, Herman was speaking before, the local terroir, where we want to go, financial services, so PIs, EMIs, okay, cryptos, even local banks. We have over 20 local banks. So the digital transformation is going to be there. We already have a market. We already have the market, okay? We have the infrastructure, we have the skill set. So through agility, we anticipated a regulatory cave and took regulatory opportunity. That is why we created the strategy.
So we have the agility, we have the banks. We're one of the first to implement the AI Act, which is, of course, part and parcel with the agility. Has it started paying off, these advantages that we have? Have we begun reaping fruit?
Yes, we're building on a legacy. So if we're trying to attract the first unicorn because of the strategy, that is because that has already happened. So if you look at gaming, we were the first country to regulate online gaming. We had the first unicorns there. So these big companies which are listed now, which are practically the world's largest players, some of them started from Malta. Those were the unicorns. So we created an ecosystem. We still have a vibrant economy on that. So the success is more than being first, is the predisposition to put Malta in an advantageous position, which is different than being first, because even a mule can be first,
Yeah, to attend.
but to attend.
Yeah. Okay, so a key component is the sandbox that you've discussed. Can you tell us why is it so valuable?
So let me tie the sandbox to the other 4 components.
Sure.
So we have predominantly four major components. This strategy ties in with the fact that we're going to implement the AI Act. So any person who wants to practically promote AI, service AI within Europe needs to comply with the AI Act. So you have a lot, and the AI industry is predominantly non-European. Actually, quite a small percentage of Europeanness in technology is currently being developed. So we said, listen, so all these operators out there to tap into Europe need to comply with the AI Act. It's a burden. That's an opportunity for us. So the first tenet is a bridge. That bridge is for these third country operators, but secondly, it's a bridge internal as well. What we're doing for one industry is a horizontal enabler. I mean, it applies for financial service. If you create a compliance blueprint, if you create a compliance roadmap, it can be applied very easily to gaming, to health,
Wow.
to transport. So even there, you're building an internal bridge, okay? And you scale it up slowly. You can't do everything at once. Secondly, we are creating as well a tiered compliance structure. So licensing compliance with regards to the AI Act together with the AI Act, because it's not only the AI Act. There are other legislations. That's why we're going to imbue it as well with the activity from multiple operators. So that is the second stage. The third stage, which ties these first two together, is the sandbox. The innovative part of the sandbox is that we thought of a two-layered sandbox. The first part is like a playground, because we're going to try to attract AI, which is either AI, you're training a model or a system, and you want to see if you can make it in the EU. Then that can be scaled up as a SaaS or PaaS, depending what you're doing, so software as a service or platform as a service. Then that can have another flavor, because it can be licensed as well as a financial services license, and there the MFSA would come in. So we're trying to capture those three layers as well. The fourth part then would be, if you have the sandbox, you need to have the entry point of the sandbox, so the parameters, particularly if we are distinguishing between the playground and the regulatory sandbox, which is the AI sandbox as well, okay, with a European dimension. You need to have the tenancy terms, and you need to distinguish between each case and which authorities are going to interface, and you need to have the exit point. In the exit point, we're leveraging as well on what the law stipulates. If you're high risk, you're going to be high risk, and you need conformity assessments, what we're going to provide you with in the sandbox, you can use this as well for a compliance assessment certificate. So that is the strategy. Last but not least, data. So part of the strategy is, and this has national importance, that we have a synthetic data strategy. Synthetic data is extremely important, okay? For the sandbox, for the participants, and even for the national digitalization strategy, and we lack it. And we should, as a country, treat that as a national resource, particularly if we're aiming high on the technological layer, and we want the industries to flourish from that space. One last thing, so that people understand what's behind the strategy, we're trying as well to centralize the strategy at Cabinet's office. So it's not within the remit of a particular ministry, but when you're speaking about technology, and it's a horizontal which will cut across different industry, that should be elevated as well at Cabinet's office. So that predominantly is what our strategy is all about.
Wow. I think that merits an applause in and of itself. It really did feel like I needed a whiteboard for that.
I can get you on.
There will be more conversations that we will definitely have.
With pleasure, with pleasure.
So, look, it really does sound like, you really have a great ecosystem mapped out from the sandbox. The agility, the way the regulator, the way the politics, everything has been so contemplated at a granular level. So, what's next? What stands in the way of the future?
Two things. We need to be aware of failure. We failed before, we can fail. There are as well certain elements which will need to work. The clogs need to work for this to actually not be launched, but to be successful. If we're going to promote governance, we need to install the governance structure ourselves. There needs to be the collaboration. We need to find the right funding for startups, because there will be startups, but even for operators which are already up and running, if they require funding, okay? That is in the works as well. So that is something which we're actually planning right now as well. Ultimately, I think now the next step is, I think the time factor. Unless we do it at least first quarter next year, we'll lose the time window. That is the trick.
First quarter next year.
First quarter next year. Because otherwise we lose the momentum. That is where other countries will be still planning how to implement the AI Act, how to implement the sandbox and everything.
How likely is
Whilst
it to...
I think with the predisposition we saw, I mean, the strategy has been done practically in a year. Not only been done, discussed and everything. Now, yes, it needs the political blessing, but I think it is something possible, because, mind you, we're not going to start with all the respective financial services sectors, so wealth, whether it's insurtech. No, we're going to start with the simplest one, which is RegTech, which is also an enabler itself, which would also permit an adequate testing ground for the respective authorities to play with each other, to understand more than the modus operandi, to understand how the modus operandi within this particular framework should function.
It's really impressive how well thought out this is. If we get this right, what's it going to mean for Malta's future?
Well, it adds to what we already have. In Malta, I think we're promoting value. We have been promoting value. Now that value is changing, but we're always an enabler. So we're emancipating according to the circumstances. So it's always value.
So on that very important note, we're going to bring this section to a close. I'm John Malé on behalf of FinanceMalta, on behalf of all the speakers. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you to the speakers. And now it's on to Through the Care.
Fantastic. What a great set of conversations. Ladies and gentlemen, this does bring us to the end of the day. So before you just jump up and leave, I just want to give you a couple of points of important information. So we're going to be here again. This was I managed to get through the whole day without squeaking. Now I'm squeaking. Ladies and gentlemen, this does bring to the close of day one, which means we have day two tomorrow, and the doors open again here at 8 a.m. We'll be getting things underway at 8:45 a.m. sharp. So I do recommend, we know what the traffic is like, I do recommend making your way down here pretty early. Tomorrow will include, once again, panel discussions, keynotes, firesides, networking, and of course, lunch tomorrow as well. I'd like to thank all of the sponsors once again, but particularly our main sponsor, Kalamata Keshguru, Moneybase. And don't forget that you can find out everything that you need on that QR code that's on the back of your badge. Everything to do with the agenda, the speakers, and so on. But now I would like to invite you all to join us for that crucial and important networking over at Portomasso Suite. Thanks to our drink sponsors, Dominion. And I will see you all tomorrow morning, 8:45 right here.